Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining us, and welcome one and all to another of Thursday's teissTalks. Today we are talking about securing the human perimeter. We've got a great show for you today, as always. But before then, a few notices. Welcome to our LinkedIn viewers and streamers. However, if you are watching us on LinkedIn, you won't be able to ask questions. So please do join us on the Tice website where you can ask questions. Come over to the dark side. We have cookies and questions. And if you do ask a question, you are obviously in the running for a Tice Talk mug, a much sought after item. So much so, one of our speakers even has four of them, three of them not gained through conventional means, apparently. But nonetheless, they are very much collectible items. Please do join us and ask questions. For now, let's bring everybody onto the stage, shall we? Please come onto the stage, Daniela, Rebecca, and Freddie.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, Daniela. Thank you.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Rebecca.
Hello.
And hello, Freddie.
Hello.
And Freddie, you are today's sponsor. Thank you so much. We all appreciate the tea and biscuits you have provided. So please thank you. Please, everybody, thank Freddie. Let's get straight onto it, shall we? Let's get straight onto the news item. It comes from our friends at Dark Reading. The headline reads, employees enter sensitive data into Gen AI prompts far too often. This kind of comes from the school of the bleeding obvious, isn't it? This is the sort of thing, exactly the sort of thing that people do when there's a new tech. They just use it very irresponsibly. Does this come as any surprise to anyone?
Absolutely not, I'd say.
Yeah.
You give people the tools, they're going to start playing around with them, and there's no time to educate anyone on anything. As soon as they're playing with it and they're getting value out of it, it just takes over their lives and they start pumping anything in there.
Mm.
Yeah, and it doesn't come as a surprise to me, but it does come as a huge worry because working for higher education and further education, we obviously have a responsibility to our students' data. It's not just their data, though, and their personally identifiable information. Really, we need to look at the IPR of our students who are producing their dissertations, both at undergrad and postgrad level as well. So if we were to say use AI to assist us with marking or to check facts and things like that, we could be actually putting their IPR at risk as well. So we've got extra dimensions to think about too.
And
So it's not just.
no,
Oh,
it's just sorry.
go on, Daniela.
It is human nature, right? We're selfish, and we always cut corners. And hey, you have a solution that can speed up your work and help you get fancier emails sent out. It's just a natural behavior that we see here. It's abiding by the laws of the internet, right?
Yeah, that's right. Put the, if you build it, they will come, to quote a very old film that many of our audience won't know about. But but I think, it goes on to part of the challenge here is that the companies that create these, like Microsoft, for instance, call it Copilot. It's now built into everything. In many cases, people might not even know that when they ask it a question or when they upload a file, that actually it's being thrown into a massive pool of data that's publicly accessible, or at least ostensibly publicly accessible.
Yeah, I think that's something that we see across all of our clients who use generative AI. And there are times where it's okay to be using it, and we need to talk about that as well. Like, it's acceptable to using it at scale when it's integrated into all your applications. I think where it's scarier is the new up and coming AI tools. So things like DeepSeek, where it's potentially a little bit more unregulated than something that Microsoft is creating. And we don't know where that data is going. At least with Microsoft, we've got a little bit of an idea about how they're producing it. Maybe not entirely. Who do we trust? I don't know. But you'd hope they're not training on absolutely everything. Maybe they are. But with these other ones, where does it end? This learning about us all the time.
That's right. That's right. And should organizations just be blocking this from the outset in order to put controls in and allow a controlled like a controlled rollout, or is that just going to stifle innovation and actually put people at a or organizations at a disadvantage to their competitors?
Well, I think from the education perspective, I think if you start putting all these restrictions and you leave it a long time before we can start using the AI tools, other people get ahead, and we're not being competitive with that. We're thinking about our students that need to have the skills to go into the workforce, and a lot of them will go into the cybersecurity profession. So why would you want the people potentially protecting us in the future to be at a disadvantage from the outset? So I really think carefully about trying to control that too much and think a little bit more about how can we make this safe. I mean, the first paragraph in the article says it's about looking at organizations' hesitancy to adopt AI practices. But when I was with a group of business leaders from Jersey yesterday, which is where our college is, we were discussing and having polls on, why might we be hesitant to adopt AI? And actually, the main reason was a skills gap. Security wasn't the issue. Only 8% of people saw security as an issue. It was the skills gap. So we really, if anything, need to be upskilling and embracing this technology more so we can be in charge of it rather than cyber criminals, and make sure that we don't accidentally leak the data.
Now, I know we've got a poll waiting in the background, which is basically us asking, has your organization put controls in this? So let's run that for a few minutes. So I just want to come back to your point there, Rebecca. There's it's not about cybersecurity per se, but it's there's a quote in here: employee data makes up 27% of sensitive prompts in Harmonic Security Study, the folks who did this. That's a huge amount of sensitive personal data that's being uploaded, presumably spreadsheets of people's dates of birth and stuff like that. This is the criminal's dream, isn't it?
Well, it's quite explainable. Yeah, it's
Please
terrifying. It's also very appetizing. Of course, it depends on from where you're looking into it at it, but it's quite understandable as long as the users do not have the literacy that is necessary to understand what they're actually doing. And I should not assume on behalf of all those users, but I assume that at least not many would willingly put their personal data out there without having some kind of a purpose. In this case, they don't realize the consequences. At least that's my my hope. That it's just on the best intention to promote their activities and to, of course, to improve their performance. So hopefully that's the reason.
I think that's it, and that's what we see a lot, is because last year we launched our like generative AI monitoring, which is a fantastic way of being able to see which employees in your organization are using it, B, which models they're using, is it an approved one, but also what data are they actually putting in there. And this is stuff that you want to be able to let them use it because it's productive. It helps them get what they want to do, and there's no bad intentions with doing it. Probably in 99% of the time, they're not trying to train something to gather all their data. But what we see all the time is somebody's logging into ChatGPT and they're saying, "Hey, build me a table of employees. I'm doing it for something, something useful that's going to help me." And it's full of national insurance numbers. It's full of next of kin contact numbers, all this stuff. And that's the stuff that is the scary for the organization. So it's like they have no control over that. And I know we'll come on to like the human perimeter, but this is the kind of the fear that organizations have now, is it's no longer just all there in their bubble or on their endpoint. It's everywhere. It's in all the apps they're using. And that data is just so easily lost out of the organization. And I think that's where that main fear comes from around it, and why I'd be intrigued to see the results of this poll.
There's this lovely quote in it. Organizations risk losing their competitive edge if they expose sensitive data, said the researchers in a report. Yet at the same time, they also risk losing out if they don't adopt Gen AI and fall behind. It's a real damned if you do and damned if you don't scenario at the moment. I mean, much like any early adoption of a revolutionary technology, but it does seem to be, I think AI has been top of the agenda for a good 2 or 3 years now, and will continue to be, it would seem, for the future.
Do you remember the cloud when we started putting things in the cloud, Tom?
I remember when we naively called it someone else's computer, yeah. Or a data center if you're really old, but yeah, exactly. But cloud is now just, well, it's rarely talked about anymore, at least with the same level of distrust and hope for the better future all rolled into one.
And people talk about when Google came along for the first time, and a lot of businesses sort of refused to believe quite how big it would be. And no, I don't need to spend my time building a website or reaching the top rankings on Google because I've got a great reputation, and that's all that really matters. And I feel like you do have people who have that opinion about AI where they're terrified to roll it out because they're like, you can't outweigh, the negatives and the positives. There's too many. But I think it's just, if you can utilize it right, then you're onto a winner, and we can adapt to make sure we use it successfully.
Yeah. I'm going to show my age. For every VHS, there was a Betamax, or even for every Blu-ray, there was an HD DVD. We easily forget about that one. Let's close the poll and take a quick look at the results before we move on, shall we? Here we go. Ooh.
Oh, interesting.
That is quite an interesting balance, isn't it? So, okay. Well, no, it seems to be the majority, but that's very interesting. And that's probably maybe the audience, obviously, or maybe the cross section, as it were.
It's biased, indeed.
Exactly, but yeah, very interesting nonetheless. Let's move on to the panel proper now, shall we? And we're talking about well, it's a natural move here. We're talking about our human beings, obviously as part of the human perimeter, all trying to do their very best in the day job, all trying to get ahead or even just keep ahead. But there's a whole bunch of new technologies, AI being the obvious one, but cloud, SaaS models, SaaS adoption, etc. Loads of collaboration tools. I mean, so many collaboration tools, all with very weird one-word names that you can't find in a dictionary. It's not surprising, really, that and also the whole working from home thing, the perimeterless working, etc. It's incredibly difficult for your average human being to be on guard for every single kind of threat they're going to come across.
That's exactly it, right? And this is where the landscape has changed so much. I think the company I work for, like when it was founded by originally by the founder and a few other people involved, it was very much they were ex-pen testers who had been out there and gone into every organization and had a success rate beyond belief. But in those days, in the sort of 2010s, it was all about, the end point was the sort of place that would be your perimeter. That would be, you'd build something around that to make sure that you were secure. But as you've just mentioned about the sort of the way that everyone's using SaaS products now, things like the AI boom, and also the way that COVID and working from home just transformed the way that we operate, has completely shifted that piece from attackers targeting the endpoint to actually then looking at that whole perimeter of different things that employees are putting data into. So all those SaaS applications with one-word names, all those AI applications, every single one of those is now a target that attackers can sort of lily pad between and jump in and basically get all that data out of your business without even having to get anywhere near the endpoint. And I think that's the sort of the fear behind it.
I think maybe from the sort of education perspective here on Jersey, I mean, we're constantly worried as a community because we're quite a small island, right? I mean, in 2023, islanders were losing 52,000 a month collectively in phishing scams. This time last year, 68 residents collectively lost 2 million. We've recently, just in the last 6 months or so, we've had deep fakes created of our senior politicians to create scams and add sort of like trying to add credibility to a fake advert.
You mean I shouldn't have bought that crypto, is what you're saying?
Sorry?
I shouldn't have bought that crypto then.
Yes, well, yeah. So it's something as a small community we're really cognizant of, and we're actually looking at ways the politicians and the police and the financiers and are all coming together trying to work out how AI could actually defend against these scams. So for us, it sort of goes beyond whichever institution we're part of, and we're looking at the wider community in which this hits. But it does make you really concerned for how some of these deep fakes and AIs can really get into our social media. And it's been making us think, do we need to go beyond the phishing tests that just come through your work email? Have we come to a point where we've got a right to ask our employees and people in our community that we've got the right to test their social media accounts as well, especially when devices are used for work and home? Because those lines are so blurred now, and AI's played a role in that, because when we're trying to learn how to use these tools and we've got these free trials and things like that, that's when, and you're just having something just for a week on your device, you think, oh, it'll be all right. And we don't know how to safeguard that, really, and it's out of our control. It's beyond the regular training, right? That's not what we do, and that's not how we've approached training before. So do we need to rethink this?
Do you know what? That's the first time I've heard mention of red teaming your employees at home, which is an interesting one. My first thought is, for goodness sake, the privacy lawyers will have a field day with that one. But then you make absolutely the right point that, people are using their personal devices for work, etc., and willingly so. It's not, it's very rare are the cases where people are forced to do that. So, and also by protecting them at home, we're protecting them at work as well. So I think it's a really interesting proposal, for want of a better term, but I do think it's got legs. Quite how we do it is, that'll be down to the lawyers.
But is it really the answer to revamp the phishing simulations? The phishing simulations are being done by numerous companies, and it's a well accepted method of information security awareness in the organizations. However, phishing and scams keep on increasing. They're still here, and what is the reason for it? Because we're not treating the root cause, and it is again the human perimeter. It is the fact that the user is not aware of what they're losing, of the pain that is going to cause them, and they need to balance those advantages versus the risks. Rebecca mentioned the app, and it's usually said that if an app is free, then you're the product. And those users, the community and the organization should be given literacy, or should be given resources to learn about the possible consequences.
And we find that there's so many organizations that have employees that find those apps, that they get the free trials. It's that sort of like bottom up, for want of a better term, adoption, to say, I found this cool tool, I've started using it, I've put some data in it, and then it sort of slowly makes its way into the organization and just becomes part of the main culture. And at that point, like you could be too far gone. And we've seen examples of that where it's so much part of the culture that actually people could be targeted down that method. So attackers could be creating what is a genuine poison tenant of a genuine application. So they could be signing up to a Notion or something that somebody in the organization would naturally sign up to, and then sporadically bring in everybody, but actually using it as a way to start bringing employees into their own tool that they've created that is branded to that organization. And I think this is where, you mentioned training, where it starts to get difficult. With phishing simulations, it does give you an idea of click rates. It doesn't necessarily solve the real world threats on phishing, but this is just one angle, right? And this is something that for for so long people have been training on, and we're still seeing high click rates. Any organization that uses our sim phishing will experience high click rates when they start. And this is, years after the trend of sim phishing has started. And if you imagine trying to train across every single area, so you're trying to train across sim phishing, you're trying to train against people to spot poison tenant attacks, it just becomes impossible. And people who are trying to go about their day jobs are suddenly unable to think about anything except security, because it's all drilled of don't get us breached, don't get us breached. And that's why we've sort of changed our position on all this for the last few years on really, it's not the employee's responsibility to be security aware. It's more for the organization to build a bubble around that employee to make them able to just go about and do their jobs without having to worry about everything. Exactly. And then, have less of this sort of blame culture when something happens to them. They're scammed out of money, whether it's in their personal lives or if it's something that affects the organization. That actually, how can we protect them without having to worry about that stuff? And ultimately, security doesn't become this blocker that people have to spend hours and hours a week or a month or whatever that looks like doing this security awareness training, when actually they can be protected through various means and automated interventions.
Do you think we're seeing a sea change then in that, because not that long ago, I was having conversations with people about, look, security is everybody's responsibility. We all have to be aware. We all have to be on the lookout. Do you think there is a sea change going on here whereby it's like, you know what, we tried that, doesn't work. We've got to try something else. We've got to, I was gonna say put a firewall around this, like a human firewall almost. But it's that, as you say, creating that bubble, securing our environments, securing our systems, securing our endpoints much more effectively than we currently are. But what model does that look like? I mean, that's
the $1 million question.
Well, yeah.
And it's a difficult one, because there is definitely a sea change, and we're seeing this across lots of organizations that we're speaking to at the moment. Around, people are starting to go, you know what, we've been running security awareness training for years now. We've been running these attack simulations for years, and we're still getting breached. We ran a recent study that was like, and Marcus will kill me now because I don't know the exact numbers. I think it was 79% of organizations that say that their awareness training is effective also got breached in the last 12 months. And it's when you're trying to weigh up, then is it really effective? Shouldn't we be trying something different at this point? If people are supposedly aware and we're training them on everything, why are we getting breached?
I've got some thoughts on that. So we do phishing training here. We didn't do it at my previous place of employment because we didn't see that it worked. Coming here where we do it, phishing training where you get sent the scam fish, and then you've got to do in the moment training where you watch the video and answer the multiple choice questions. It doesn't work. And actually, as educationalists, we already know this doesn't work, because if you do have a phishing scam, whether it's been sent to you from your employer as a test, or it's been sent to you genuinely from a hacker, once you realize, you will get in your head, you will get a rush of cortisol, and you will get a rush of dopamine, and you will get a rush of adrenaline, and you will get these bad neurotransmitters that actually stop you from learning. So any training you do after that doesn't go in. And we know this, there's been a lot of educational research and neuroscience research that actually will say the way we've been trying to approach educating people about phishing attacks and about all these things that could happen to them, the approach is fundamentally wrong. We've been trying to perfect a flawed method, and just looking at the different pedagogical ways in which you can approach how people can receive information and then arm themselves and make that part of their behaviors, and not try and change the behavior, try and change the things that underline that. That is teachers have been doing that for years and years to get reluctant students to learn geography or maths, and we're really good at that. And we're trying that approach now at college, where we're having an individual or team approach that is not based on the attacks coming through. And we found some really good results. I've got some data now from my staff that shows that that approach absolutely does outweigh the benefits of the phishing test completely.
So let's move on a little bit here. So we've ascertained we're doing it all wrong. Great. Let's just leave that one out. But we're looking at here the next bullet point effectively is preventing, breaches by applying the cyber kill chain to human vulnerabilities. Sounds a little bit word salady to me, but what does that frankly mean? How do we apply the kill chain, the well-known, approach to stopping these kinds of attacks to human vulnerabilities?
Yeah, and I think this is a tough one, and I think maybe the sort of wording behind this is quite difficult because we're talking about human at the end of the day, and that is it's never going to be easy to start saying about like how an individual will behave in a instance of like a threat. But if you look at something like the MITRE attack framework, which has been around for years, and it still completely applies to attacks when trying to get into systems. And there's nothing really that speaks to that same language about how people behave, how people go about their lives, that actually can be exploited through various techniques that the attacker is able to use on the employees to get into an organization. And this is something that we've been trying to map out at Culture AI, is how can we translate that left to right journey from the initial discovery phase right through to the impact to the organization against all the attack vectors, all the techniques that can be used against people in an organization. So we've been working to build this human threat map, which is a resource that we're actually going to be publishing to everybody, which is really exciting. But we've been using it internally now to help influence what we're building so that we're able to manage risk. Here's a fancy view of our human threat map. So everything from reconnaissance through to initial access, right to that point of impact. This is a path that an attacker could take through an organization. And this is mapped across from our security experts who are ex-pen testers. They would use these techniques to be able to get through to an organization. And this is where we say, well, okay, this is great to be able to map this out. But if we go one step further and open up the wider view of this, I think there's another screenshot that we've got to share, which is the expanded version of the threat map here. So inside this, you can see every single technique that an attacker could use to get to an employee. And you can see in the orange section here for initial access, we've got things like phishing. Well, that's one thing, right? Phishing is one area, and that's where a lot of organizations go, this is where we're going to spend X amount of dollars to solve the phishing problem, and then we have a secure culture in our organization.
Yeah.
But if you're an attacker, you're going, great, they've got phishing solved, and have they? And then we can look at, well, okay, I'm going to do a SAML jacking attack. I'm going to do invite tampering, and all of these different vectors are things that organizations, they may be aware of it and they may be terrified by it, but they're not talking about it, and they're certainly not able to train on it to all employees. So that's why this is the kind of sort of framework that is going to be out there for organizations to use and try and look at the problem in a slightly different way.
Are those charts available to download?
So we're going to have a public link very soon, which we're looking forward to sharing, and we'll make sure that you have access to that. It's nice. You can go around, click around into individual elements, learn more about the threat itself and any risks that live within that. But where sort of Culture AI comes in on this is we are looking at those threats and we are detecting those risks within the platform. And then once you're able to detect those in real time, doing something about it. So creating that bubble around the employee.
So you didn't create those boxes by just having a long lunch and sat around a whiteboard going, what could it possibly be? These are actual evidenced real world ways of etc.
So that's right. So inside each of those, when you click into those cards, there are even references to news articles of real world breaches that use those attack vectors. And this is something that our security researchers are working on not least because a lot of their network are still pen testers and still inside organizations doing red teams and successfully getting in there with all these weird and wonderful ideas that the blue teams are not able to keep up, and products aren't able to keep up either. So it's the first stage is be aware of the sort of landscape and where it's progressing, and then where do I focus my energy that isn't just phishing and certainly isn't large scale awareness programs.
So, Daniela, have we, as security professionals, and based upon what Freddie's just said there about, phishing is just one of those many orange boxes, etc. Have we, as security professionals, and certainly from an education and awareness perspective, we just failed completely here?
We didn't fail completely. We just approached it from an IT perspective. We're trying to apply the same rules, if or else, to human beings, which is not possible. And quoting another scholar from a film that you may know, Dr. Malcolm, he says that nature finds a way.
Yeah.
And human beings have that nature, that is to find the shortcuts. And it is possible that it's not even, we're not talking about malicious actors. We're talking about that developer, or I don't want to name names. This is just hypothetical, okay? I'm not attacking developers. Or even a security member from the security team that, as we read on the article, there were pen test results on those queries or on those AI prompts. So we're not only talking about malicious actors, we're talking about human beings being
people under stress to get their job done.
Exactly. And I think that psychology should be more applied, and that's where we are failing in certain parts. We should mix both worlds, that is, try to bring the literacy, so that is to make people aware of the risks, and then have also some technology to make them comfortable in their own environment, the bubble, as Frederick mentioned, to have all the tools that they need to perform their jobs. Because that's, if they don't have the tools, they will find them. And we know that. And building that bubble with data loss prevention methods or any other auxiliary methods, if we find a mix of both, I think that's the ideal balance.
So how do we, how do we make sure that we're not actually compromising their productivity as a result of this? How do we make sure that whatever we do, well, I guess this comes back to that building that bubble. We need to do something that allows us to allow people to do their jobs. When they're stressed and take shortcuts, it doesn't matter, because even the shortcuts are protected. Again, we've got a major paradigm shift going on in how we protect our organizations.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it comes back to that, traditional awareness training might have worked when that would have been a lot of a smaller map if we'd mapped it 10 years ago. And you could train people at that point. But now, we have to adapt in the same way that the attacker is adapting, in the same way that we've got AI tools. And then we said earlier on, AI is great for productivity. It's great for the attackers as well, but it's also, we should be able to use AI to defend, and we should be able to use it to understand about various pieces of information we have about the employee or any human, about what they're doing in their day-to-day life, that is able to protect them. And it's quite scary to see that entire map, and you span it all out and you think, okay, we're a million miles off here. Like, there's a lot of stuff we need to do. But I think the first step towards getting that bubble built around the employee is to start to tie together the bits of data that you have on your organization. I think there are many great security tools out there, and they can get all kinds of data about how employees are behaving, kind of things that people have access to, and all of this good stuff. But often they are kind of operating in silos, and they're not necessarily talking together. And being able to build that context around an employee that can then feed into this bubble. So how can something observed in Slack make a decision about something that's been observed in the browser? So for instance, if somebody logs in to HubSpot and we recognize that as a normal login through password with a strong password, and it was in the UK. Somebody logs into Slack in France with the same account. There's an impossible travel right there. Now, you might have tools that are just detecting both of those, but without them doing it together, missing that link that says there is a potential here for an insider threat going on. So I think really the key is to get as much telemetry on employees as possible, and find a tool that is able to tie them together, and then automate interventions to easily respond to those risks as and when they're detected.
Mm. Isn't that a bit like playing catch up though, Rebecca?
Well, I think the two have to go hand in hand, don't they? I mean, it goes back to the fact that we've got AI, this new tool. It's really about making things happen faster, right? I mean, from a productivity point of view.
And at scale.
I was at another event this week where we were looking at AI agents and the creation of AI agents and how they could really boost productivity and take away some of that really dull admin that we sometimes need to do from time to time, but automating it, including down to automating my email inbox. Now, it could be used for a force for good or bad there, because maybe the AI agent spots the phishing emails, even though that we know now from the diagram that's just such a tiny thing. But equally, where's the insider risk? Where are we monitoring the insider risk here? What about a rogue employee creating an AI agent that's then scraping information and sending it off automatically as well? So, you know, it's how many different types of AI do we need to monitor the different types of AI? It's tricky. And education will still have to go hand in hand, whether, you know, it adapts or not, because we need it for compliance and we need to feel like we're doing something. But it'd be really good if that education actually demonstrated an impact in the same way that these models and the protection does as well, I think.
Okay, well, I think we can probably start to wrap up here. So I normally ask our panelists the same question, and it's, what should our audience do when they get back to their desks tomorrow morning? We've got a few more minutes here, so you can wax lyrical as you see fit here. But practically speaking, what should we be doing when we get back to our desks tomorrow? And Daniela, let's start with you.
Well, listen to your users, listen to your organization. Having the pressure to adapt, for example, AI tools, because the competitors are also using those AI tools, may be a priority. And that's where you come in. You need to also to protect what's about to come, so the future for the organization. And you need to go hand in hand with the organization in order to prevent future risks. Of course, that I'm not really a fan of banning solutions. I'm a fan of providing alternatives that you are comfortable with, your users are comfortable with, and without sabotaging the innovation. Because let's face it, technology nowadays has made us run really faster than before, and we should keep up. So put on your sneakers and get
Start
ready
running.
to run. Yeah.
Excellent. Rebecca.
I think get curious. Find a way to learn more about AI. Treat it as a special interest topic. Just become fascinated by it. Follow some people on X or on LinkedIn or on any social media platform, so you get those little gentle nudges and you just gently become aware and share that information with your friends and family. So it just becomes part of your everyday, but do it in an interested way.
Thank you. And finally, Freddie.
Yeah, I would also say, don't be afraid to get stuck into AI on the AI subject. And I agree with Daniela on, you don't feel that you have to block it. It's a really exciting opportunity. Just try and leverage it in a certain way that works for your organization. And I think on the, I put a very scary diagram out there, and I don't want it to be how on earth do I manage this overnight? it's taking a tactile approach to how we can manage human risk. And I think take a look at how you're doing things today. You know, what incentives have you got going on at the moment? What are you doing to manage human risk? And ask yourself, are we seeing breaches, or are we seeing risky behaviors? Are they trending downwards, or are they trending upwards? And if so, what can we do about it? And I think at that point, I mean, I'm not to plug it, but I'd say, yeah, reach out to Culture AI, and I'd love for us to have a conversation about how we can help you manage human risk at scale. And
you say that those frameworks will be available shortly. At culture.ai, I presume, is the website?
Absolutely, yeah. Culture.ai is our website, but the human threat map we are going to be publishing as its own entity. We're really keen for it to be something that is used across the industry as a resource. It's not something that is, here is Culture AI, and here is what this map is influencing the products, and this map is everything. It's all about how can we map out the vectors that employees are up against from attackers,
so we can raise the bar across the board.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then people don't have to worry about security. They can go about their jobs and do what they're paid to do.
But then we'd be out of a job. How's that work? Anyway, so thank you very much, Daniela, Rebecca, and Freddie. Thank you so much for your time. It just leaves me with a couple of announcements. Shame on you, dear audience. Shame on you. That's all I can say. No mug for anyone. I'm going to keep this one for myself. There is another show next week, but I'm afraid to say I will not be here to do it. I am in another country. But we have my good friend and not quite so good host as me, Jonathan Craven. He will be doing our session next week on the 20th of February, bolstering your defenses against supply chain cyber risk. Do come along. I know Jonathan will be running a cracking session for that. And all that leaves me now, again, is to say thank you to our audience. And once again, thank you, Daniela.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Freddie.
Thank you very much.
And audience, don't forget to stay secure, my friends.